Absolutely going to testify. I won't even say his name. He is an evil being and is going to pay.
It was just, living in this shame, living in all this sort of stuff in my past, and I wasn't able to move on. It was hard for me being that young and being in the industry and not knowing where to turn, and everyone, telling me they love me and, just turn their back on you in a second.
Combs allegedly planned and controlled the sex performances, which he called freak-offs, and he often electronically recorded them. The freak-offs sometimes lasted days at a time.
The courtroom grew quiet when Diddy's calm exterior abruptly broke. When Justin Bieber's name rang out in the room, his hands clenched, his jaw tightened, and everyone in the room could feel the tension rising. You're going to see the precise moment Diddy lost it on the second day of the trial, just following the news that Justin Bieber had openly expressed his support for Cassie. Even the court was astonished by what transpired when security had to intervene.
Do you think the person that the you of then was on a path of self-destruction?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I would have, for sure, 100%. Yeah. It would have been no bueno. It was bad. I don't know if I'd be alive for sure. It was dark. So I'm very, very grateful to have influences in my life that have played a huge part in me seeing their relationship with Jesus and their relationship with their wives and their relationship with their kids and saying, that's what I want. But I want to definitely tell my story so that if that resonates to anybody, that they can hopefully, just protecting those moments, because people take for granted encounters and
Wow! I feel violated right now. Wow.
Just lean into me again. You smell amazing. How old are you?
Thank you.
How old are you?
I'm 16. I'll be 17 in like 2 weeks.
I don't ever remember smelling that good at 16. Like that was bad. Wow, look at your eyes.
Bieber turned 15, and it suddenly seemed that Hollywood was keen to almost initiate him. I think that's the right word. Like there was almost like this initiation that he needed to go through. So I want you to be now super uncomfortable and watch this video of an interaction between him and none other than Diddy. Listen.
Justin, you ever seen the movie For the Times of Their Lives? Like, where we hanging out and what we doing. We can't really disclose, but it's definitely a 15-year-old's dream. I have been given custody of him. He signed to Usher. I had legal guardianship of Usher when he did his first album. I did Usher's first album. I don't have legal guardianship of him, but for the next 48 hours, he's with me. So and we gonna go full.
Justin Bieber, who was signed by Usher, involved with Scooter Braun, now all of a sudden he's being put in the hands of Diddy, who, it is true, he became the legal guardian for Usher. You can look up all of the allegations of what Diddy did. The allegations are essentially that Diddy very much initiated Usher. As we are going through these lawsuits and Diddy is in prison, we are recognizing that everybody knew. This was an open secret about what Diddy was doing. So it just begs the question, who allowed Justin Bieber to be in the presence of this man, knowing what he was up to, allegedly up to? That seems to be very...
The courtroom seemed strangely quiet at the beginning of the second day. Diddy was confident as he entered the room with his pricey legal team. But there was something strange about his eyes if you looked closely. He continued to stare around the room as if he was waiting for someone to suddenly approach him. That morning, security wasn't typical either. They positioned more guards next to Diddy's table. Not the typical celebrity trial setting. There was a guard along the aisle and another just behind his chair. They seemed to have received a hint that anything may go wrong. Everyone's heads turned when Cassie entered. It was a plain black dress with a white collar that she wore. It wasn't ostentatious, but it was a statement. Like bodyguards, her friends surrounded her in a protective circle and escorted her to her seat. The difference was obvious. Diddy, who has paid security, Cassie with devoted companions. The most intriguing aspect was that Diddy was always looking at his phone. With his thumb, he continued to draw it out and scroll. Then each time, his face became darker. His attorney even had to go over and remove it from him at one point. I saw Diddy's hand trembling at that point. The prosecution team, meanwhile, was behaving strangely. They continued chatting behind files and exchanged notes. When one prosecutor showed another anything on her iPad, They would both nod as if they had just received the last jigsaw piece. They anticipated a major event. Before the judge even showed in, Diddy's primary attorney made at least 3 attempts to calm him down. Diddy wouldn't have it when he leaned over, put his hand on his shoulder, and spoke in his ear. Every time, he brushed the man off with such force that the lawyer had to support himself on the table. The judge's expression said volumes as she entered. She was easygoing yet all business on the first day. She appeared to be a principal who had just learned that the troublemaker was plotting something nefarious today. Her gaze immediately shifted to Diddy's table, and she said something in a whisper to her cashier that caused him to nod and get his phone. Diddy had seen something on social media minutes before court began, but no one in the room was aware of it yet. In front of everyone, something that would make him go totally crazy. It was too late when his crew attempted to conceal his phone. He had already seen Justin Bieber's post. You could see the tension rising with each syllable as the bailiff ordered everyone to order. The jurors must have sensed it too, as they continued to glance at one another, perplexed as to why everyone was tense. One jury even requested water, taking the cup with a clearly trembling hand. A vein in Diddy's forehead began to appear as he sat there with his knee bouncing beneath the table. Diddy just moved the legal documents his lawyer was putting in front of him in an attempt to divert his attention. His breathing was becoming more labored by the minute as he gazed straight ahead, like witnessing someone attempt to contain an explosion. Everyone in the room sensed that something was going to happen. Simply put, we had no idea what might trigger him, or how severe the situation would be. As everyone awaited the inevitable, the wall clock seemed to be ticking more rapidly. Diddy was on the verge of losing his flawless reputation in front of the whole courtroom.
Yeah. So, yeah. I just want to protect her, you know? I don't want her to lose it. I don't want her to, you know, go through anything I went through. I don't wish that upon anybody. So, yeah, if she ever needs me, I mean, just think about how young I was and so impressionable. And you have everybody telling me how awesome I am at all times, you know? And like,
It's like taking a kid and putting a kid in a room full of nothing but sweets.
Right.
And just saying, I'll be back in 2 days.
exactly. I just want people to understand, like, the psychology behind why I potentially could have problems in my life. So.
Meantime, let's talk about the fact that Combs' co-defendant in a civil case, a case, by the way, that accuses him and this co-defendant, another A-lister, of rape. This guy is once again slamming the attorney behind the case, insisting that he be sanctioned for allegedly not doing his job. We're talking, of course, about Sean Carter, better known as Jay-Z, once again calling out attorney Tony Busby, calling out his character, more specifically into question, claiming that the Texas attorney's filings have, quote, substantial. Now, we've talked about this before, but basically, a civil lawsuit was filed against Sean Combs on behalf of a Jane Doe who says that she was raped by Combs and another celebrity at a home after the Video Music Awards in 2000.
A significant event occurred online when everyone was preoccupied with the courtroom drama. No one anticipated the social media bomb that Justin Bieber delivered. Bieber sent shockwaves through the music business and into the courtroom when he issued a statement in support of Cassie right in the thick of the trial hearings. Because Bieber and Diddy had a long history together, the entire situation was very painful. Do you recall the videos of Bieber attending Diddy's parties as a teenager? Diddy referred to himself as Justin's older brother and mentor. He boasted of having influenced Bieber's career. This public declaration seemed like the ultimate betrayal because of that history. This was also no ambiguous message of love and support. Bieber became detailed. He said that he saw Diddy's treatment of Cassie firsthand while attending industry gatherings. At a 2015 after-party, he reported witnessing Diddy hold Cassie's arm too firmly. During interviews, he said, Diddy would interrupt Cassie in the middle of her sentence and speak for her. They weren't hearsay. These were direct observations. The posts went viral during the first court recess. Individuals gathered in clusters in the courthouse corridors, displaying their phones to one another. Before re-entering, a court official had to remind everyone to switch off their electronics. Attorneys might examine screenshots printed by legal assistants. Even other jurors, who were obviously aware that something significant had occurred, was perplexed by the rumors circulating in the corridor. This striking antique photograph that said 1,000 words was included in the post. It featured Bieber and Cassie grinning at a music event from years ago. A glance into Cassie's eyes, however, revealed something. The timing couldn't have been worse for Diddy, who wrote in his comment that he had always appreciated Cassie's fortitude and was sorry I didn't speak up sooner. Within minutes, the post was viewed by Bieber's 270 million followers. Headlines were already appearing on news websites. Celebrity rumors were no longer the only thing involved. During an ongoing trial, this enormous celebrity with credibility took a definite stance. Court reporters were enraged. To phone her editor, one lady physically rushed out of the courtroom. On her laptop, another was typing furiously. "Did you see it?" a big network reporter muttered to his colleague on the other side of the aisle. Everyone was aware that this altered the public's perception of this case. One of the bailiffs had to beg everyone to stop whispering since it was getting so noisy. As if they couldn't believe what they were witnessing, people continued exhibiting their phones to one another. To see if Diddy knew yet, some people turned to face him. Others saw Cassie, who undoubtedly heard the disturbance but remained perfectly composed. The precise words that Bieber selected were what gave his speech its impact. "Some of the behaviors I saw years ago deeply troubled me, but I didn't understand the pattern they represented," he said, describing Cassie as courageous and honest. He went so far as to say that he was disappointed in me for failing to understand the control dynamics that are now so clear. The tweet was initially viewed by Diddy's lawyer. He did damage management right away, forcibly obstructing Diddy's view of another lawyer's phone while frantically urging everyone to take their electronics off the table. However, Diddy had already seen the screen. His gaze broadened as he fixed it. Everyone who was close enough watched his face change in that instant. It was too late.
And I should mention he was signed by Usher to a label that was owned jointly by both Scooter Braun and Usher, and he was considered Usher's protege. He has been described Usher as his mentor. Justin Bieber, is continuing the purge. He has now moved on, his original mentor. So this is a very big story, and the reason why we should discuss this and we should not diminish what is happening, it's not celebrity drama. This is actually the fall of Babylon that we are witnessing, Hollywood Babylon that is. He did an interview back in 2020 with Zane Lowe. I think this was on Apple Music. And he was speaking about another young artist that was coming up, Billie Eilish. And Eilish. And he was basically speaking about how he wanted to protect her because she was now another young person, a rising artist in the industry. And sort of out of nowhere, he became quite overcome with emotion. Take a look.
Yeah, I definitely feel protective of her. It was hard for me being that young and being in the industry and not knowing where to turn, and everyone, telling me they love me and, just turn their back on you in a second. So yeah, it's hard because I want her to know that, she can count on me, but at the end of the day, I don't want to never gonna force myself to be in relationship with her. It has to be natural, right? So I just kind of, let her do her thing, and if she ever needs me, I'm gonna be here for her. But yeah, just protecting those moments because people take for granted.
I'm not even kidding. Watching that clip makes me emotional because he is saying so much without really saying anything. Protect Billie Eilish from what? From who?
Diddy's expression transformed as if someone had switched a switch when he viewed Bieber's message. This expression of complete amazement came first. His lips genuinely hung open as his eyes widened. Then, when the treachery hit him, his eyebrows furrowed. The frightening thing, though, was seeing it turn into anger. His jaw clenched so tightly that you could almost hear his teeth grinding and his nostrils flared. Later, reporters were informed by a woman seated 3 rows back that Diddy's hands began to shake violently. He was unable to even keep the documents his lawyer handed him stable when he attempted to take them. They fell to the ground after slipping straight through his fingers. Everyone began to stare at that point. Diddy's abrupt rise to his feet was the first clear warning indication. It wasn't your typical stand-up where you had to stretch. It came suddenly and violently. The bailiff, who had been keeping a tight eye on him all morning, stepped forward right away. This wasn't the bailiff's first time dealing with someone who was about to lose it in court, as you could see. Then Diddy muttered something that was audible to those in the front seats. "Loyalty is meaningless now that I've done everything for that child." His lawyer then physically grabbed his arm and yanked him back into his seat when he mentioned penalties. Diddy just shook his head as the lawyer whispered something urgent in his ear. His breathing became laborious and heavy, as if he had just sprinted upstairs. The resulting court doodles are very unsettling. The artist's portrayal of Diddy's face was flawless. His neck veins were visible. His jaw was tightened and his eyes were swollen. One sketch artist claimed that in her 12 years of covering trials, she had never captured someone looking so passionate. None of this was lost on the prosecution. After giving her aide a discreet hand gesture, the lead prosecutor stood up and slipped out the side door. We then learned that she was instructing their staff to get a certain witness ready earlier than anticipated. Someone who could directly address the points Bieber made in his post. Using just their eyes, the security officers in the room engaged in a silent communication. Without drawing attention to themselves, two of them moved closer to Diddy's table. In order to ensure he could swiftly get his weapon in an emergency, one guard actually unclipped something on his belt. Diddy's entire attitude absolutely altered. He had been Mr. Cool on the first day and the early hours of that morning. Straightening up, taking notes now and again, and nodding assuredly, he now had a totally new appearance. He continued to fidget, rubbing his palm across his face and releasing his tie as if it were suffocating him. Then the worst part of it all happened. A water glass smashed on the floor when Diddy abruptly slapped his fist down on the table. He mumbled something that the court reporters sitting nearby could obviously hear as others startled at the sound. I'll see to it that he never again works in this town. They won't both. In order to keep Diddy seated, his attorney had to put an arm around his shoulders. The judge was not amenable to it. She slammed her gavel and demanded a 15-minute break right now. But while Diddy's legal team clustered around him, that respite simply gave him more time to stew in his rage. Their expressions were ones of sheer terror. Diddy would turn out not to require those 15 minutes at all. Before Cassie returned after the recess, it was time to get even more fired up. There was a shift in Cassie. She held her head up and her shoulders back as she made her way to the witness stand. She glanced directly at the jury members rather than the floor like she had done on the first day. Nor did she try to avoid Diddy's eyes. She simply acted as though he wasn't special enough to be a cause for alarm. She introduced her testimony with previously unheard of proof. The prosecution's showing of Diddy's communications to Cassie caused a gasp in the courtroom. In a 2016 fight that lasted 17 messages, Diddy demanded to know why she hadn't answered her phone. In another, he was shown asking for her exact location, even the hotel room she was in. I have to know where you are every minute. The note reads, "That's the deal if you want to keep your career." The room grew so quiet that you could hear the ceiling fans as Cassie described how Diddy controlled who she could talk to in the company. Unless he was there, I was unable to speak with any of the male musicians on his list. She said Justin Bieber was one of them. When I asked him why, he said I shouldn't ask him. When I did it nonetheless, he grabbed my arm in front of everyone at the after party and whispered that I would regret it. Cassie's words never wavered or faltered. She made it clear that she was being observed, managed, and kept apart. She described a pattern that exactly matched what Bieber had recently shared on the internet: monitoring, public control, and private threats. She provided every detail to back up his assertion, creating the appearance that their stories were well planned. Cassie had a strong answer to the prosecutor's query about why she hadn't come forward sooner, even though she testified that she hadn't spoken to Bieber in years. He stated no one would believe me. He asserted that he had control over who worked in this industry and who didn't. I seen him make choices that affected people's professional futures. Notably, 2 jurors reacted. One woman wiped away her tears while an old guy wrote something down and underlined it 3 times. The stunning moment came when prosecutors played back security footage from a hotel in 2018. The footage showed Cassie trying to strike up a conversation with a male performer in a hotel lobby. Then Diddy arrived, put his arm around her, and led her away. The body language she had just described was precisely the same. Diddy immediately leaned over to his lawyer, mumbling excitedly and pointing to the screen. Cassie gave extremely specific allusions to specific instances, dates, locations, and more attendees. March 8, 2017, at the Standard Hotel in New York. June 22, 2017, at his residence in Miami. Backstage on September 12, 2018, during the VMAs. Every time she mentioned a date, Diddy's lawyer quickly reviewed his notes, seeming increasingly alarmed. She claimed that more witnesses who had been reluctant to testify were now contacting her lawyers after seeing Bieber's support. "My phone hasn't stopped with messages from people saying they're ready to tell what they saw," she said. Then Diddy said something completely out of control. After speaking to Bieber at an industry gathering, Cassie said in her testimony that Diddy pulled her aside and said, "Even Justin knows what happens to people who cross me." This threat seemed more damning now that Bieber was publicly supporting her. When Cassie continued to testify, it was actually possible to see Diddy break down. Bieber became more nervous, writhed more, and spoke more furiously to his lawyer with each new piece of information pertaining to his confession. The confident music tycoon was disappearing in the public eye.
And weeks after the initial filing, Busby submitted an amended complaint naming Jay-Z as the celebrity who allegedly participated. They wanted copies of these videos for themselves. And I've talked to lawyers about this before. There's a big advantage to having the electronic video, the electronic evidence yourself, right? You don't have to always go over to the other office. You can view the materials on your own. It's a way to better prepare for your defense. And Sean Combs' lawyers argued that under the federal rules of criminal procedure, electronic data that is in the government's possession, Judge Subramanian denied the defense's motion to amend the protective order, but without prejudice, meaning this issue could be revisited. So Subramanian's order reads, quote, while the government objects to handing the videos over, they provide several options for defendant to consider that would permit the defense to view the videos, access the information they're looking for, and even allow them to manipulate the video.
It was hard for me being that young and being in the industry and not knowing where to turn, and everyone, telling me they love me and, just turn their back on you in a second. So if she ever needs me, I'm going to be here for her. But yeah, just protecting those moments because people take for granted encounters, and I just want to protect her, I don't want her to go through anything I went through. I don't wish that upon anybody. Yeah, if she ever needs me, I'm just a call away.
Do you realize how important the story is? Every time I have a conversation with someone who's been through this unique type of experience, I'm just searching for some kind of truth that can help.
I commend you for going there and asking the tough questions and the things that people don't want to talk about, and they don't want to go there because it's revealing, and I want people to take a look at my story, and hopefully my words can make.
Just when everyone thought things couldn't be much more dramatic, the prosecutor took a paper to the center of the courtroom. Your Honor, we would want to provide evidence that categorically denies Mr. Combs' claim that Ms. Ventura made up these charges lately. She pulled out her tablet and connected it to the courtroom's display system. The displays around the space were lit by text conversations sent between Cassie and Justin Bieber in 2017. As the prosecution concentrated on a specific exchange, many jurors pushed forward in their seats. The words, "I don't know what to do anymore," were written by Cassie. "He watches over everything," he said. "If I talk to anyone, he'll make sure I never work again." "This isn't normal, Cass," Bieber remarked. "He's not acting appropriately. You ought to talk to someone who can assist you." When Diddy saw the texts, he sprung from his chair. The sound of it scraping on the floor made everyone jump. His face was a flaming scarlet and his eyes bulged. The idea of written music has completely disappeared. His lawyer grabbed his arm and tried to pull him back down. "Sean, don't do this," he whispered loudly enough for the front seats to hear. However, Diddy was not listening. He slapped his lawyer's hand away so hard that the man stumbled backwards. "This is all untrue," Diddy shouted and gestured at Cassie. "You know quite well that's not what happened. Where is your allegiance now that I have done so much for you?" His voice became louder with each word. "Both of you are fabricating this." The judge immediately struck her gavel 3 times. "I'll have you hauled out, Mr. Combs, unless you sit down now." Her words cut like a blade through the uncertainty, but Diddy wasn't stopping. A pair of security officers rushed to the defense table. One approached Diddy and Cassie from behind, while the other stepped between them. Every syllable of this unplanned outburst was being recorded by court reporters who were typing frantically. The jury watched in shock. One elderly woman in the back seat actually covered her mouth with her palm. Leaning away from Diddy, a younger man in the front row physically distanced himself from his anger. "Your Honor, we need a recess," Diddy's lawyer screamed to get back in control. But Diddy was already gesturing at the messages shown on the evidence screen. "They aren't authentic. Those were phony messages." He was now making strange movements, and his voice was echoing off the walls. "It's a prelude. Justin never said anything like that." The evidence seriously harmed Diddy's case. These emails from 5 years ago completely disproved his claim that Cassie fabricated up claims to gain attention or money. She had been telling Bieber about the same behaviors for years before filing any legal action. The judge slammed her gavel again. "Remove the jury immediately," she ordered the bailiff. As they flooded out, the majority of the men and women couldn't help but gaze at Diddy, who was still standing and shouting. A security guard stepped in on either side of him. "Sir, you need to calm down now," you said firmly, placing a hand on Diddy's shoulder. For a moment, Diddy seemed capable of pushing the officer as well. Instead, he finally became silent and began to breathe deeply as the reality of what had happened began to set in. The damage was already done. Diddy's meticulously cultivated character, which he had been upholding for decades, had collapsed in front of everyone. As the security officers kept watch at his sides, the audience witnessed a whole different side of the music tycoon, and Cassie's charges began to look much more credible. Now that the jury was safely out of the room, Judge Marlowe didn't mince words. Standing up behind the bench and pointing straight at Diddy, she delivered the smackdown of the century. "Mr. Combs, this is a courtroom, not a recording studio. What happens here is beyond your control." Her words slashed through the room like a blade. "If you ever have another outburst like that, I will treat you with contempt. For the duration of this trial, you will stay in a cell and only emerge when instructed to do so." She wasn't done yet. The court ordered the completion of a mental evaluation prior to the proceedings the following day. After that, she implemented more stringent security measures. Diddy would constantly have 2 police officers nearby. His lawyers couldn't even speak to him without an officer present. His phone privileges were revoked. Diddy's lawyers huddled in the corner of the courtroom like a football team that had fallen 40 points down. The chief attorney kept shaking his head while another lawyer made frantic calls. Sometimes, as a third lawyer frantically took notes, he would look up at Diddy and say, "We're in trouble." Their body language told the whole story. They knew that a serious setback had just occurred in their case. When the jurors returned, it was difficult to ignore their faces. A middle-aged woman in the front row physically shifted her seat slightly away from the defense table. Now sitting with his arms folded and his pen closed was an old guy who had been taking detailed notes. The most telling juror was number 8, a young professional who had smiled at Diddy on the first day but would not even look at him. But the prosecution maintained perfect poker faces. But they were clearly satisfied. Calmly, the lead prosecutor organized her files, sometimes flashing Diddy a contented smile. Her assistant even had to hide a little smile behind her hand at one point. Security continued to be on guard for the rest of the day. Diddy's chair was surrounded by 2 police officers who were no longer even pretending to be hurt. At the courtroom entrance, another man stood with his hand on his belt. The message was grasped by everybody. They weren't taking any chances with Diddy's behavior. There was no self-control among the lawyers sat in the gallery. One veteran federal prosecutor told the man next to him, "He just lost right there." Law professors who had traveled to witness the case were frantically writing in their notebooks. After shaking his head, another prominent defense attorney said, "Amateur hour." Cassie maintained her composure the entire time. She sat with perfect posture, her hands folded in her lap, her expression bland. When Diddy had his tantrum, she didn't react, didn't recoil, and didn't give him the satisfaction of seeming scared. The contrast was the most striking thing. Her perfect control stood in stark contrast to his complete lack of it. There was a discernible change from the morning at the end of the second day. Diddy had walked in wearing an expensive suit, a swagger, and a confident smile, as like he owned the place. Now, with his tie loose, he stumbled out, accompanied by lawyers who seemed to have aged 10 years in a day. He kept his eyes on the floor, avoiding the reporters that jammed the hallway. The most enlightening moment was when Did's lead lawyer put his hand on his back and led him out. Diddy brushed it aside just as he had that morning. This time, though, it wasn't confidence. It resulted after defeat. That courtroom had more than just evidence. It is a matter of character. Diddy really lost it when Justin Bieber joined Cassie, but Cassie stayed strong and brave. Their own identities showed through when they were pushed. Let's be truthful. Diddy lost his temper and threatened people in front of the jury. That moment probably resolved this case regardless of further evidence. The most crucial question at this point is, will anybody else raise their voice? Justin Bieber recently defied the unspoken rule that celebrities should watch out for one another. The door is now open for other celebrities to enter and confront Diddy.